Jay, thanks for joining today on this Simple Coach to Coach interview. Really do appreciate you taking the time out of your, I'm sure, busy teaching schedule.
Thank you very much for having me.
Yeah. Hey, I'm really interested in speaking to you because I watched really fascinated with sort of how your season developed and how it started versus where you ended up. I thought was just dramatic in terms of how it turned. So, but without without giving too much away, let me get a sense as to how you think your season went.
It was a difficult season. Obviously, we started out, I think it was like 0-4-2, which is the worst start in my career in 46
Mm,
years. However, in all of those games, it was really close. And
yeah.
for example, 2 years ago, we won 15 games, and I was never satisfied with how we were playing. I thought we could have played better.
Mm,
Even though we didn't win at the beginning of the season, I was very satisfied with how the team was playing. It was just soccer. We didn't
mm,
get blown out by anybody. Everything was close. There were a lot of overtimes involved, and we just weren't getting any breaks.
mm,
So I'm a big culture guy. I think that behavior comes directly from the culture of the team. And before you can start winning, the culture has to be in place.
mm,
That is what has helped us be consistent over 46 years or whatever it is. Um, so we were very patient. We kept working. We did have a very young team, and we
mm,
have a really good team coming back. Um, I mean, our freshman class this past year was really good, but they were
mm,
freshmen and they were
mm.
making freshman mistakes early on.
Right.
And but we, as I said, we stayed the course. We did what we do, and we didn't give up a goal in October. So that got us back, into the thick of things. And Kenyon didn't beat us at all. We tied them over there, and then we beat them in the championship. And if they were number three in the country, then we were number 3A. And it was
Mhm.
just we started out a little bit. We just
Yeah.
started out a little bit late. We did turn it around. I still think we played really well against Mary Washington in the second round.
Hmm.
We totally dominated. They were ahead 1-0 at half. We totally dominated the second half, but we just young kids. We just couldn't score. But
Yeah.
I think the guys got some great experience. They learned how
Hmm.
to deal with adversity. One of the things that bothers me about coaches is they always talk about how participation in football or soccer or whatever helps
Hmm.
players deal with adversity, but they never tell the players exactly what they have to do to deal with adversity. Never.
Yeah.
They
Yeah.
think, okay, by going into overtime and winning a game in overtime, you've learned how to deal with adversity. Well, that isn't it. And
Yeah.
we talk about that all the time, adversity. So our guys faced adversity. They turned it around. The culture on the team and the attitude on the team was really good, even when we were
Mm.
0-4 and 6. And I know other programs have this too, but there's an innate amount of pressure playing at Ohio Wesleyan. Um,
Hmm.
we get everybody's best game. Everybody likes to beat us. When they beat us, it's like they
Yeah.
won the World Cup.
Yep.
So that was heavy on some of the older players, not the freshmen, because freshmen are freshmen. They don't know what the hell's going on. And as you know, the best thing that happens to freshmen is they become
Become
sophomores,
sophomores.
and right, they
Yeah.
will be sophomores, and so we'll be okay. So, I was. I don't think I was worried, but I knew we would see if we were playing well. If we were losing and playing poorly, then I've got a problem.
Yeah.
But we still outshot people. But
Yeah.
we did some of our younger guys did some stupid things early on
Hmm.
that cost us goals.
Yeah. I'm gonna jump around to a question that I was gonna save for when we talked about the season, but I'll just jump to it right now. That when you were like you ended up 11-5-4, but you started out 0-4-2. You lost to Loris, Calvin, Ohio Northern, and John Carroll. Sorry for it. It was not intentional in that regard to where the John Carroll had. You
No
tied
problem.
Case. You tied Case and Hope before your first win. I mean, you're in the hole. You you're in. They were tight games. I'm not saying like you were. I watched. Maybe it was. Maybe it was the Calvin game, and I didn't think you played poorly. I just don't think you were on the right end of the scoreboard. Um, I mean, did you say anything? Was there anything that had to be done at 0-4-2 to sort of motivate the team at that point? You know, like you're taking on water on a ship. You're going to start bailing as quickly as you can. Was that something that you were doing, or was it just sort of like, hey, we're doing okay. The results will come. We just got to keep plugging along.
I think the latter is how I deal with things like this. I think the time to make changes is not when a team is struggling, because in my mind that's piling on. I mean, they all
Yeah.
had their doubts, they were all nervous and so on, and if I went in and changed the formation or made radical changes, then in their mind they're thinking, wow, Jay's upset. This is a
Yeah.
real problem going forward. The time to make changes is when you win 10 in a row. And that's
Yeah.
when you can start making some changes and finding things out about your team. So no, we stayed the course, and we practiced the way we practiced, and we play the way we played, and yes, we did try some other guys on the field. That if we had won six in a row, might not have gotten a lot of playing time, because we wanted to find people who could play together and click and so on and so forth. But other than that, it was no big changes. I didn't want to pile on mentally, because I knew, especially with the older guys, I knew that it was taking a toll on them mentally.
Yeah. So I'm going to bring this up, but I spoke, and one of the first interviews I did postseason, I spoke to Brandon Bianco at Denison, and I asked him. I was like, "Look, I find it remarkable that a team goes 0-4-2 and then turns it around, wins their conference tournament, goes to the NCAA's. I think you don't see that very often." And I asked him if he said anything needed to be said at that point, and he said probably not. That everyone knows at Ohio Wesleyan, as soon as you walk into the locker room, I guess you could see the trophies and all everything. Like, it's pretty much staring in your face what you have to do. So I think that's interesting to your comment earlier about there's a pressure, right? An innate pressure to play for Ohio Wesleyan because of the success that you've had over that period of time. Um, did anything? I mean, aside from the going 0-4-2, did anything surprise you in a good way? Like your team, some of your players?
Yeah, the young kids, the freshmen. We have a couple of freshmen that earned a starting spot. I don't remember when, but it was in that 0-4-2 streak, and they just played exceptionally. We had a freshman named Gabe O'Reilly against John Carroll. At the end of the game, Dehan came up to me and said, "Who the hell is that kid?" I mean, he was the best player on the field,
Yeah.
and unfortunately, we had 2 minutes of a mental letdown defensively, and we lost. And but no, we had some bright spots in every single game. I think
Yeah.
I think I think defensively early on we were no good, but we held it together. And as I said, we didn't give up a goal in October, and we still ended up defensively, statistically, in the top 10 in Division Three. We hang our hat on defense. If you look at
Yeah.
the number of goals we give up every year, it's not a lot.
Yeah.
And
No. No. No.
and
No.
of course, if you don't give up goals, you're in every game, and you have a
Yeah.
chance to win.
Yeah. Yeah. I told that to somebody before. I'm like, Ohio Wesleyan, you wouldn't realize it, but I think the cornerstone is your defensive posture. When you
Yeah.
don't have the ball, how tight you are, and how difficult you make it for a team. And if they score, hey, good on that team, right? Like, because it's
Right.
really, really difficult. And so you keep it 0-0, and you have obviously guys who can put the ball in the back of the net. But
Well,
all
that's a
right, so
good
I'm gonna,
point. I'm sorry,
yeah,
that's a good point because talking about the 0-4-2 streak, it wasn't that the other teams were running all over us and scoring.
you're
It
right.
was mistakes that we were making in the final
Yeah,
third that allowed them.
yeah,
Like John Carroll scored 2 goals in a minute and 58 seconds,
yeah,
and it was like out of nowhere. But it was
yeah,
two
yeah,
two goalkeeper errors, and I don't do
yeah.
this often, but I actually took my number one goalkeeper out after
Uh,
that. And I hardly ever do that. But it was just we were making mistakes. The other teams
yeah.
weren't dominating us.
Right, right, right. Yeah, no, that's very true. The games I've watched, I don't see teams breaking you down, right? Like there's a difference if you're in your posture and they figure out a way to get through the gap and they score a goal. To me,
Right.
where if you're going to be vulnerable, it's because, like you said, there's going to be a mistake or somebody missing their assignment or that they're not in the right position. That to me is that to me is defensively where it happens against you, right?
Right. I
Um,
agree.
I mean, this is you might not have assessed it, and that's fine. I mean, you have enough in the bank, but let me just ask: how would you assess your coaching in during this time? Because obviously you had the challenge at the beginning of the season, and then things turned around. How do you think you did as a coach?
Oh, I think that's for other people to answer. I don't know. I don't change much. And Brandon alluded to that when he
Yeah,
told me that. I don't
yeah,
change much. We have good players. We have a good system. We have a great culture at Ohio Wesleyan that we've had for 40 years. We
yeah.
do a whole bunch of things that other programs don't do. And so I don't yell at my players during a game. I don't yell at the officials. I just do what I do and stay cool and calm. In fact, I got an email this week from a young coach, and he asked me some questions and so on. At the end of the email, he said to me, "The biggest coaching lesson I've ever had in my life was watching you and Matt, my assistant,
Uh huh.
at Hope College during the NCAA tournament 2 years ago, playing number one ranked Chicago." And he said the Chicago coaches were yelling and screaming and at their players, at the ref, and going ballistic. And he said, "You and Matt just coached, kept your mouth shut. We talked to
Yeah,
each other. We don't yell at the players. I mean, there's too much pressure out there. Why do
yeah,
coaches
yeah.
do that and put more pressure on their players? It just boggles my mind. So no,
Yeah.
I don't think I changed a lot one way or the other. I mean, I probably lost a little sleep. I don't remember it really, but I probably did. But other than that, as I said, if players today are smart, if they see us making changes, they can interpret that as
Oh, they're in
panic.
tune.
Yeah,
Yeah, yeah. Like something is wrong, right? I
correct.
think that's I think that's the natural inclination of a player, right? Even in the course of a game, why is he subbing me? He's probably thinking I did something wrong. I think
Correct.
that's just sort of the natural thing. They don't think, "Oh, I'm just trying to change something tactically or anything like that." But
Right.
um, just really broadly, how do you think the NCAC shaped up? Was it what you expected competitively?
I think, yes, the NCAC, unfortunately, there are some haves and some have-nots, and the
Mm-hmm.
have-nots are trying to get into that top tier, but for a variety of reasons, they're struggling. But I like to think that over the years, the Ohio Wesleyan team, through our success, has pulled the NCAC and the other teams in the NCAC up a little bit so
Mm-hmm.
that they can compete against us. And I think that's what happened. Kenyon obviously is a solid team. Brandon
Mm-hmm.
with Denison, they are solid and they will get better every single
Mm-hmm.
year. And
Yeah.
Wabash, Chris does a great job at Wabash, and so. But then we have some teams that struggle, and
Hmm.
if you look at those teams, sometimes it's a matter of, for example, Wittenberg. Now Dwight's doing a better job, and they are better than they were. But colleges that put the emphasis on their football program, sometimes
Hmm.
the soccer programs struggle because they
So,
they
yeah.
don't the administration doesn't really care
Yeah.
about soccer.
Yeah. Yeah. Very. That is. Yeah, I could. Yeah, I won't make any comments, but yeah, that is very true. I'm. And I remember when I was playing, Wittenberg was one of the top
Yes,
school, like team wise, like they were one of the top Ohio teams, and
yes,
it's just there's only so much. I think with programs in general, right? There's only so much benign neglect that you can handle, and then before even recruits notice, right? Like,
right.
why are we second fiddle? We're the same athlete as, right? Isn't that the Division III way? But
Yes, for years, the NCAC always had four teams in the top 20: Ohio
uh-huh.
Wesleyan, Denison, Worcester, and as you say, Wittenberg. I mean, for
Wittenberg,
years.
yeah,
And now
yeah,
Kenyon's snuck in there, and
yeah,
unfortunately, Worcester's dropped out a little bit. But, Andy
yeah,
does a great job there. He's a really good coach,
yeah,
and he just doesn't
yeah,
at times get the players, that can compete at a high
yeah,
level.
yeah, yeah, yeah. I could go down this rabbit hole, but I don't want to get anyone in trouble. you know.
No problem.
Um, let yeah let me ask you about the rule changes. So, season under your belt, there were no overtimes during the regular season. You had four ties and a win that went into OT in the NCAA's against Penn State Harrisburg. I mean, do you have any thoughts on the OTs? Do you like the lack of them during the season? Would you have liked to, in those ties, would you have liked to, during the regular season, the three, would you have, or four, would you have liked to have gone to overtime to settle it? Or you okay with the ties?
Tough question. Here's what bothers me about the rule changes. We have a group of people on the rules committee, and not only on the rules committee, but other coaches in Division Three,
Mm-hmm.
who want to make Division Three like the English Premier League, and they want to get
Right.
rid of all, in quotes, please, what I call American rules, and go to
Yeah.
the EPL rules. And one of those is no overtime,
Yeah.
and overtime is an American thing, and we've had
Mm-hmm.
it since I've been coaching, and I don't
Yeah.
understand. And now they want to reduce the number of subs, and they want to get away from reentry. And
Yeah.
in Division Three, I think all of these rules are counterproductive to our mission and what we should be doing. I just don't
Yeah.
understand why we have to be like England. We're not England. In fact, I think we beat them in two wars, if I'm not mistaken. So why do we want to be? So and so I think that's what bothers me. And slowly, the rules committee slowly, I think, is trying to move us to a European, or
Yeah.
you know a European league, and we're not, and we
Yeah.
shouldn't
Yeah.
be.
We're not. I mean, there's no there's it's like apples and oranges as far as I'm concerned.
Correct.
What's the point? What's the purpose of collegiate soccer? And I get at
Right.
some level, yeah, you're it's a possible training ground for future professionals, but that's dwindling in purpose, right? Because these kids are
Right.
coming out, going
I
professional
mean,
earlier and earlier.
that's correct. That's not what I do. I mean, I've had over
Yeah,
30 players who have played professionally, and we've got four or five
yeah,
who are playing at different levels right now. But that isn't my main mission. I mean,
yeah,
Division Three was founded on, among other things, participation. And
mm-hmm,
so, why do we limit the number of substitutes? So here
yeah,
we go out and we recruit all these good kids, and now they can't play because we have a restriction on substitutions. I mean, that's, to me, is ridiculous, absolutely
yeah,
ridiculous.
yeah, yeah.
But
Especially, yeah. especially you don't. Some programs do, right? Like you don't have a roster of 13 guys who by themselves can win you or bring you to a certain level, right? It's
Right.
usually 15, 18. Like the deep roster teams are the ones usually that I think that you see in the top 20, right? They have
Correct.
like any one of their top 20 or their 20 guys, first 20 guys could go anywhere else and play.
Correct.
And I think shrinking that down is silly. I don't. I would be personally opposed to that too, right? Like it just doesn't make any sense in my mind. Again, if
Right.
there were money on the line, if there
That's
were these
different.
kids are that's different, but there is no money on the line. That's
No.
part of the
No.
problem, right? Like there is no money. So
Yep. No, I agree. And I always tell my assistant coaches, we have to find 15 players. In preseason, I
yeah,
go, we need 15 players. And then as the year goes on, we'll get that up to 18. And so
yeah,
if you look at the average number of substitutions or players at Ohio Wesleyan who play in the game, you'll
hmm
see that it's in the low 20s. It'll be 20, 21,
yeah,
22 in every game. Now, as
yeah.
we get into the tournament, the bench shortens a little bit, fair enough.
Sure.
But during the regular season, we play 20 guys a game.
hmm
I mean, we recruit
hmm
good guys.
Yeah,
Here's the thing about depth. You don't have depth if you don't play the kids, do you?
yeah, yeah,
So if you have depth, they got to
yeah.
play.
They got to
That's what
play.
depth is.
Yeah,
So, in my
yeah,
opinion, so
yeah.
if we recruit them, we're going to play them.
Yeah, yeah. Do you have any? You don't. I mean, aside from your vote as a coach, you don't have any involvement with the rules committee or anything like that, right?
No, in the '90s, I was on the rules committee for a number of years, but
Yeah,
that's I don't do it anymore.
yeah,
They
yeah,
send out questionnaires, the rules
yeah,
committee,
yeah,
to
yeah,
all the coaches, and we answer them and say what we want to say.
yeah,
And but the demographic right now of Division III coaching, as
yeah,
you can imagine, I'm probably the oldest, and these younger, I hate to
yeah,
say this, but these younger
yeah,
coaches want to be like the EPL. They want to be like a
yeah,
professional league, and I just think
yeah.
they're making a
That's
mistake.
silly.
Personal
Yeah,
opinion.
yeah, 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 yeah. Yeah. I'm with you there. Hey, you saw that the rule passed that you're going to get more time in the spring, and then the fall recommendation got nixed. Do you have any thoughts on that? Would you welcome more time or?
Well, when I first got here, we used to actually have 6 games in the spring.
Yeah,
So they did increase the number of training sessions, I think, by 8, but they
yeah,
didn't increase the number of games in the spring, which to me is
yeah,
really disappointing. And to have 24 training sessions, that's okay, but to do that with only one game, I mean, that's difficult to keep the kids motivated. And
yeah,
as far as the fall, I've been asking for fall better preseason forever, but
mm-hmm.
it's a money thing, isn't it? So if my
Yeah,
guys come
yeah,
back
yeah,
8 days earlier than now, we have to house them, we have to feed them, and so on and so forth.
yeah,
And some schools in I mean, we could afford it, but some schools in Division
yeah,
Three wouldn't be able to afford that. So it would affect
yeah,
the level playing field.
yeah, yeah. Yeah, no, that's like I said, I it's easy for me to say they should do it as I think it makes more sense in the no overtime. You
Right.
know, like if
Yep.
your concern is player load, getting rid of overtime during the regular season is minimal, in my opinion, is minimal to some teams, right?
Right.
But you
Well,
give
here's what.
them another 2 weeks or whatever the number is, that's a way to reduce player load. But like you said, it's the dollar. It's how
Well,
much can these schools afford.
here's what bugs me about the overtime. Um, we play overtime in the NCAA tournament, right? So why don't we
Mm-hmm.
play it during the regular season in
Yeah,
preparation for the NCAA tournament? It just doesn't make sense to me.
yeah, yeah, yeah. That I agree. Yeah, it doesn't it doesn't jive. But like you said, that's a good point. Like these guys are trying to make this into a professional league that isn't, right? It's almost like solving a problem that no, finding a solution to a problem that doesn't exist, right?
Correct.
So, all right, let me jump to the season. After the 0-4-2 scoreless in October, you went 10-0-2 in that stretch. That included wins against Denison and the championship against Kenyon. Contrast it to the 0-4-2. Now you're 10-4-4 going into the NCAA's. Like, what was the mood at that point? Like, how was the team? Like, were you guys like, we're on fire?
Another one of the things I tell my team all the time is, in my opinion, in Division III and probably in Division I as well, there are probably, I don't know the exact number, what is it, 12, 15, 17 teams every year that can win the national championship.
Yeah.
And then once you get into the tournament, you have to have luck in terms of who you play and the seeding and everything, and you got to be injury free. So our goal every year is by the end of the year to be in that group that can win the national championship. And believe it or not, I believe that we were in that group going into the NCAA tournament. I think our seeding was a problem. I think they sent us 450 miles away, which didn't make sense to me, but that's okay. I go and play where they tell me and when they tell me, and keep my mouth shut, and that's how it is. But I thought at the end of the year we were one of the top 12, 15 teams in the country.
Yeah. I don't doubt that. I watched the game against Kenyon that you did in the NCAC, and I thought you guys, I mean, if there was a team that was humming, you could just see that you were all on the same page, how you're going to do this, how you're going to win. And I was really, really, really impressed. Let me ask you about the Mary Washington game. I do think you something happened when they scored the goal, that a switch went off and you started really taking the game to them. And just want to get your sense as to that game. What was sort of going through? What did if you made? I mean, was there anything that you had to say at halftime that you thought, aside from the regular adjustments?
No, the halftime talk was all about the mental.
Yeah.
And I told the guys that, look, we're on the road, NCAA tournament. The home team is ahead 1-0. But that half is over. Let's take care of it this half. I mean, scoring 2 goals. And again, our goal as a team is to score 2 goals a game. If we score, I mean, my assistant, he has too much time on his hands. He figures out all this stuff. He says, if we score 2 goals, I don't know the exact number, but it's in the 80% that we're going to win the game. I think it's 87% or 83 or whatever. If we score 3 goals, it's 92% or 93%. Because we've given up 4 goals only like 4 times in my career. So I mean, we want to score 2 goals. So I told them before the game we need 2 goals, and I told them at halftime, hey, we still need 2 goals. We can do it. And we maybe not should have, but we could have in the second half. No question about it.
Yeah. I think you had opportunities. Look, and I'm not taking away from Kenyon. I mean, they can defend. They can make it really difficult for you. And I thought that was the balance. Like, who's either going to hold or break?
Right.
Like that's
correct.
That's where it was gonna.
Correct.
That's where it was gonna happen. Were you at the end of the game? Were you disappointed? Like, obviously you're disappointed in the loss, but do you think you deserved more?
Anytime we're not successful, I'm disappointed. And of course, you have to question yourself as the coach. What could we have done more?
Yeah.
But in the second half, my assistant coaches and I kept talking, and we said, what else can we do? Who else can we put in there? We're all over these guys. Yeah. And, we felt all we had to do was get a break and tie it up 1-1, and then we'd be ready to go.
Yeah.
'Cause I think we had the momentum. So, we kept questioning ourselves, but there were no answers. They would go, hey, these guys are playing great. So when we saw a kid who was fatigued, obviously we took him out. But I think that the team did probably as much as we could have done.
Yeah, yeah, yeah. You definitely had the momentum in my book. I mean, but
Yeah,
there's something about Mary Washington, right? That just they can manage that somehow, and look how far they got, right? Like I
yeah,
just think
yeah,
that was probably their season. But
absolutely.
what are your just a couple more questions, and I'll let you get on with your day. But what are your plans for the spring? Like, do you have any like what do you guys do? Do you have any thoughts as to how you structure it?
Yeah, the spring for us is all about teaching.
Mm-hmm.
Let me give you an example. Did you watch the Netherlands and United States game in the
Mm-hmm.
World Cup? All
Yeah.
right. It's a great game. I just wrote an editorial for Soccer Journal about it.
Mm-hmm.
Basically, the European players do everything right. All the little things they do right. The
Yeah.
American players don't. And so we spend the spring, for the first hour of every spring practice, I will coach and I will
Mm-hmm.
teach. And then I'll
Mm-hmm.
let my assistants take the second 35 or 40 minutes and they can do
Mm-hmm.
the tactical stuff.
Right.
And what we do is I have a list of things that I want to go through and teach.
Mm-hmm.
There's not a lot of teaching that goes on in the fall because of the schedule.
Yeah. Yeah.
But I mean, for example, the first 2 days, I'll tell you right now, the first 45 minutes of the first practice is going to be rondos. And I'm going
Mm-hmm.
to explain to the team why we do them, how we do them,
Yeah.
and how you can get better by playing them. Because most guys, they go through the motions with rondos.
Yeah.
They
Yeah.
knock the ball around and blah, blah,
Yep.
blah. And so, and then at that point, I'm done. And, Matt and Corey then take over and they do some
Mm-hmm.
tactical stuff, which, to be honest with you, tactics are way down on my list of priorities. And
Right.
so the spring for us is all teaching, so we can
Yeah.
make these guys better.
Yeah.
For example, I did for the hell of it in one of the semifinals at the World Cup. I wish I could remember which game. A lot of our guys and a lot of American players like to use the outside of their foot all the time.
Yeah. All the time.
Well, the
Oh
pros
yeah.
at the pros at the highest level don't. They just don't. I counted how many times in one of the semifinal games players on the field used the outside of their foot, and the number
Yeah.
was 16 times in 90 minutes with 20 plus players. And I may have missed one or two, to be honest.
Yeah.
But
Yeah.
even if I missed, so it was 20 in that amount of time. So my question is, American players, why do you use the outside of your foot? There are times to do it, but
Mm-hmm.
most of the time it's a waste of time because your touch is awful, you lose the ball, and the other team
Mm-hmm.
has it. So I mean,
Yeah.
little things like that we
Mm-hmm.
want to improve upon.
Yeah. I often say, and it's one of my crackpot, well, not crackpot, but my theories is that rondos are the most overutilized, most poorly performed drill by and large across youth clubs, colleges. They almost think it's like, hey, you throw the cones down and you're done,
Right?
and you let them do. And I think that is the worst use of the rondo.
Awful.
The worst, awful.
If you,
Drives me nuts. Drives me
I've
nuts.
spent many hours watching training sessions in South America and Europe. I mean,
Hmm.
hundreds of training
Yeah.
sessions. And when Bayern Munich does the rondo, man, it's a lot different than when Ohio
Yeah.
Wesleyan does the rondo.
Yeah.
I mean, I saw
Yeah.
Jurgen Klinsmann 2 foot a player in a
Yeah.
5v2 at Bayern Munich, and I'm like, these guys, and the story goes, Franz Beckenbauer never got in the middle in a rondo in his
Yeah.
entire professional career. So
Yeah.
he took it seriously and he got
Yeah.
better. And so
Yeah.
when you see the rondos and the
Hmm.
intensity in a European setting versus
Yeah.
ours, I agree with you
Yeah.
100%.
Yeah. Yeah. Well, and then I've watched Barcelona rondos countless hours as well. Just and actually used to do as a little kid is sort of how we
Right.
started our practices with, and it's not it. You always say like, where do the guys sort of focus their attention? And there's a lot of pressure on the guys on the outside not to screw up, not to on a
Yes.
pass. if they miss a pass, they hit the ball, everybody looks at them like, man, you're just
Correct.
you're not in tune, right? Like, and yeah, being in the middle is offensive to some of these guys, right? Like,
Correct.
I'm
Yep.
not a I am not a defender in the middle of this pack. I'm, yeah, that's interesting. Hey, last question, and then I'll let you go. And then I pulled up the bookstore of at Ohio Wesleyan because now I've been guilted and I'm going to get a hat.
I don't
What
think I have one either, to be honest with you.
what does your what's your like your recruiting class look like for this upcoming? I know you said you have a really good freshman class that you that is going to doing the best thing. They're becoming sophomores, but like, what does your freshman class look like? Do you think you got guys who are really going to make an impact for you?
Yes. We're going to have a small incoming class because we're only losing 7 players, not
Mm-hmm.
all of whom played a lot. So
Mm-hmm.
it's going to be small. We try to get a goalkeeper in each class because everything we do in training is going to goal.
Mm-hmm.
But we don't have any commitments yet, but we have a really, really solid group of guys we're working on. I mean, I did 2 Zooms
Uh-huh.
yesterday with some guy, kid in California, kid in Chicago. I got a Zoom tonight at
Wow.
7, and so on. So we've got a good pool, and hopefully we can
Mm-hmm.
start closing the deal here a little bit.
Yeah, yeah,
So
yeah.
we don't need a lot, but we're only recruiting guys who can come in and help us.
Yeah,
So
yeah. Yeah, that's I always said smaller classes, better players, right?
correct.
Versus bigger classes, not as good. But does this count as a Zoom call? Are you asking me to commit to Ohio Wesleyan? Because I could. I'm a
If you have any
goalkeeper.
eligibility, right? Let me know.
I'm sure if I changed my name and dyed my hair, I could get
Right.
away with it. All
Exactly.
right. Jay, really do appreciate you taking the time. You're again one of the great minds I love to pick, and really, really appreciate it, and really impressed by your men this past season. There's so much to watch, so much to see, and again, how you did. I have not, the magic sauce or the secret sauce. I don't know where you get it from, but I wish I could find some.
A
So,
few more
thank you
years,
very much.
then we'll see.
Yeah, yeah.
Thank
All
you very
right,
much
Coach.
for having me.
Thanks.
Thank you.
See you. Yep. Bye bye. If you like this show, make sure you subscribe so you don't miss future episodes. You can also find me on anti-social media on Facebook, Twitter, and Instagram. Thanks. This is a message from my Chief Marketing Officer. I think this keeps him happy.